Welcome to the ATA podcast, where we talk to former elite athletes sharing their insights and wisdom derived from successfully transitioning into life beyond the game. A very warm welcome to the Athlete Transition Accelerator podcast. Once again, Carl and I are delighted to be joined by another fascinating guest, learning from his story of transition into the chapter beyond sport. And today our guest is Jacques du Toit, a former professional rugby player, a man who's played in the Super Rugby competition, the Pro 14, playing with the Free State Cheetahs, the Southern Kings. He's also played in the English Premiership with Bath Rugby Club and also in the United Rugby Championships with Zebre as well. So a man who's played in different cultures, different countries, different competitions. Very warm welcome, Jack. Thank you for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you, James. Happy to be here, man. And thanks again for the opportunity.
Oh, you're very welcome. Now, as people who listen to the show regularly will know, we're here to talk about transition. We're here to talk about that next chapter. But we always like to start off by just throwing that open question back to our guests to say, a lot of years there, a lot of experience you've played all around the world. If we challenged you to say, can you pull out one or two memories now that you've retired that give you a real sense of pride, things that you look back on fondly? What comes to mind when you reflect back on your sporting career?
I think one that always will come to mind is when I played under 20s for the South African team in the World Cup, and not really playing for them, but experiencing like professional rugby on another level. And at that stage, making the decision or setting like the goal to play in the English Premiership. I think I was about 20 years old. That was always sort of a target or a goal for me. And didn't know how it would happen or when it would happen, but eventually, actually in COVID, got the opportunity and the call from Bath, and the memory that sticks with me is like my whole family were delayed. South Africa on the red list, couldn't get on flights and wanted to get there as quick as possible, and ended up, getting the dates sorted and the visas and everything. And we landed in London and drove all the way to Bath, and it was just, white UK, snow everywhere. And it was just sort of a wholesome moment for the three of us at that stage, just driving in this place. We're here, this was a dream of mine, of my wife as well. Driving that road, that was sort of a wholesome memory.
Yeah,
So that will
love
always
it.
stick with me.
Yeah, I love it, and it's a beautiful part of the world. So snowfall,
Yeah,
driving into Bath. Yeah, I can see it's a sort of picture postcard environment. And anything
Yeah,
else? Is there
100%.
another one that stands out for you, Jack, when you look back?
Um, yes, you're putting me on the spot. I think another like memory that always sticks to me is a pretty funny one actually. We played our first game in the Pro 14 with the Cheetahs. We played Ulster in Belfast,
Hmm.
and South African teams were used to huge stadiums, seats filled here and there. People are passionate, but like South Africans are. But when we got there, it's a pretty small stadium, but it's packed full of very passionate Ulster fans,
Yeah,
and having their own songs, and it was just very intimidating at that stage. Like, so we all ran out, and we were bombarded with this crowd, and as much as noise they made, when our kicker took his first kick, like straight in front of the post on the 22, they were dead silent,
mm.
and I remember like our kicker at this stage is like, doesn't know what to do with this. Like he's used to people in South Africa booing him and making
Right.
noises. So he's trained for that, and it ended up, rattling him so much he missed the kick in front of the post, first point opportunity. And but yeah, that whole game was just a real cool experience. Experiencing rugby in the Northern Hemisphere, and I think that's sort of solidified my, goal of, coming to play there and experiencing that on that level.
Yeah.
amazing, amazing. We've all been there. Just as a fly half and a kicker, we've all missed kicks in front of the sticks. It's not as easy as it looks, right? It's a difficult thing to do. But some career, Jack, some career. I mean, playing for Bath is an incredible feat in itself. I mean, such a renowned worldwide brand in the world of rugby. It's such an amazing career. But just we always like to dig into that journey of transition. and sort of digging into the catalyst as to what sort of prompted that move out of professional sport. So, if you can, just sort of give us an insight into the timeline of your transition, sort of where you are now within that journey, and just a reason as to why you decided to leave when you did, because lots of our conversations are an unforeseen injury that ended a career. They didn't get a new contract. We've had some conversations where the Olympics have removed their event, so there's just nothing for them to compete in anymore. Just give us a bit of an insight into your transition journey.
So my transition is sort of a mix between, I decided to leave and I also didn't decide to leave. It was sort of a weird period between our last games in South Africa when I was still playing for Zebre, and we had sort of agreed to, extending it for +1, but at like last minute it just didn't work out. And at that stage, the market was pretty full. Budgets were spent, and so I was sort of faced with this decision. I can now wait, either 1 month or 6 months or 8 months for a potential injury spot to open up and just continue, just stick it out, or do I make that call now and say, okay, well, I'm 30 years old. I've got two kids now. We've been away from home for, more than 3 years. Is it time to come back and sort of just, hit the ground running with what's next? Because that eventually is going to come, whether
Hmm.
it's now or in 5 years. So it's a bit of a bittersweet moment. Like, okay, we made the decision. Now we're gonna stop playing rugby, and now I need to start, working. So what's next? So that's sort of ultimately what drove the transition
Hmm.
decision, if that makes sense.
And where does that take you now? It makes perfect sense, Jack. So give us a little bit of a flavour of what you're doing now. I know you're very proactive in what you're doing, but don't want to put words in your mouth. You just give the sort of audience a bit of a flavour for what you do now, what your current role is.
We met South African friends in Bath while I was still playing there. They ended up moving back to South Africa for similar reasons, to be closer to family. And he ended up, taking a role as a CFO in an HR company in South Africa. And we sort of played around with the idea, like, listen, man, if I do end up retiring, there's a spot for you at your company, or a spot for me at your company, isn't there? And we sort of joked about it, but when the time came, he said, "Well, we've got this compliance role opening up in health and safety. I do have a degree, bachelor's degree in law, so
Hmm.
it kind of does make sense." So we said, "Okay, well, let's just give it a go." So I did this, external course through them. They gave me this opportunity. They said, "Well, happy to give you this initial stint to see how it goes. Maybe it can be good, maybe not, but at least, let's try." So ended up working for them as a health and safety sort of compliance role. And I thought, okay, well, you need to stick to something long term to make it work. But I think a few months in, I just realized, like, this probably isn't the direction I need to go in. It doesn't really excite me like other
Hmm.
things does. And, I need to find, what's next. And that's when my wife and I started chatting about, what is next? Is this really like the career path for me? And we both sort of have this creative personality, and she's been working in, marketing and writing content for almost 10 years at that stage. And I've always been fascinated by what she does and seeing like the agency work that she does.
Hmm.
So I piggybacked a lot of off of the work that she did, saw what sort of the insights into her company and role, and creative projects like that always sort of intrigued me, even at schoolboy level. And I said, okay, well, that's something that I think I should pursue. I had this sort of idea in my head that wouldn't leave me to, eventually start your own business to, give yourself the financials that you need, because retiring from rugby, you take that big financial hit. And you also know that if something is your business, the chances are, like, you can grow it to a financially, positive place for yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we sort of toyed around with the idea, like, are we going to start something together? What are we going to call it? What are we going to do? And it just made sense to try and start something up like a little small, digital agency to do similar things to what she's been doing. Content marketing, working on people's websites, building it for them, helping them out with social media, those kind of things. Barrier for entry pretty low, but really rewarding. And there's always businesses starting up, and a lot of them need help with that. So it made sense in that way. And yeah, we said, okay, well, let's just do it. We'll take a leap of faith. We'll start our own thing. We don't know how long it's going to take. Ended up calling it, Leap Digital. So it's sort of
I like it.
it's based on our, faith in what we believe is for us and, the future. So we started that, and it started out with just, freelance projects, building websites here and there, helping people out with a few social posts when I could, along with a compliance role. And eventually, there was an opportunity that came up um, for a lower paying job, but in this industry. And I said, okay, well, I'll take that if it means I can do what really excites me. And yeah, ended up paying off really well. And I'm really proud that, we took the decision as a family to say, okay, well, let's take that risk and,
Yeah.
actually pursue something that makes us all, fulfilled and happy.
Yes.
So yeah, a lot of water under the bridge until then, but yeah, basically I've got my own little, I'll still say small because it is still small. I've only got a handful of clients, but yeah, it's basically like a digital marketing agency. And yeah, looking to, just now feeling I'm word vomiting now.
No, no, no. It's absolutely no. It's fine. Well, Liz, it's you're not at all, Jack. It's a fascinating story, and there's a couple of sort of really relevant points to take out of that. I think the
Yeah.
first one is that you had your degree, you had an opportunity, you stepped into it, and as you said, you've got to make a commitment to make things work. But you had the bravery and the courage with the support of your wife to say, this isn't necessarily fulfilling me. And I think that's the first key message to take out of that anecdote you've given us, because we speak to a lot of athletes who are in the process of transitioning, who feel almost a sense of guilt of this doesn't feel right, but I need to pay the bills and I don't want to be seen to be lacking commitment or lacking drive or lacking motivation. But we only get one run at life. And if your gut's telling you this is not fulfilling, I'm not enjoying it, then you're never going to be able to optimize your performance over the longer term. So the fact that you're able to articulate, I went into one field, realized it wasn't right, and then I looked to make that move, I think is really powerful. I also really like the process that you've gone through, because Carl and I spend a lot of time talking to people about clarity. You've got to try and establish clarity about what's important to you, what resonates with you, what are your values, and how do we try and find things and opportunities that align with that. So you used the word creative a few times there, Jack, that there was that creative vibe, that you enjoyed that side, you were interested in what your wife was doing, it had been something that was with you since you were a boy. So you were obviously looking to identify, well, this is important, this resonates with me, what are the opportunities? So I think you've walked through a process that we try and guide a lot of athletes through, which starts with what's important to you. If you don't have clarity on that, it's very difficult to build a roadmap. And then I think the last thing that's really powerful is you didn't just go into another paid role, you started your own business. So I think that is really powerful as well, because so many of the athletes we talk to have an appetite to do something themselves. They want to step into that entrepreneurial space. They have some really good ideas, but the fear is holding them back. So what would you, I know it's not that there's no one size fits all, Jack, but for those athletes in whatever discipline they're in around the world that are thinking about stepping into entrepreneurship, what sort of guidance or words of wisdom would you come? Because it's not all plain sailing. You can't just start a business, make a fortune. There's bumps in the road. But and what's nice from your perspective is it's only a couple of years ago, isn't it, that you actually hung up your boots? So you're still very early in this journey. But what's your thoughts and feedback on being an entrepreneur, I suppose?
Yeah, it's interesting, man, because it's a different kind of journey. But I think ultimately what I would say regarding entrepreneurship and starting your own business, and as you said, I've not been doing it long, but it's been so rewarding, but also difficult. And I think what really helped me is just to say like, just to take the knock and say, well, it's not gonna work out. It's not gonna be like this massive successful business within 2, 3 months. Like you shouldn't, if you really have that sort of desire to start your own thing, probably need to test out, does the world actually need what you want to do? Is it going to pay me? And, do I have 2 years to commit to this thing? Because, the longer you do something, the better you get. And it's a principle that comes from rugby and from your practicing days and,
Hmm.
fitment, so not fitness.
Yeah.
The more you do something, the better you get at it. So, if you're thinking about starting anything, you need to have that discipline to say, well, it's not going well. It's been month 6, but I still have, another 18 months, 20 months to dig into this thing because I believe in it. There's a need for it, and I'm just going to get better as time goes on. So yeah, that discipline and that patience to pursue that is key.
Yeah, and I think just building on the Jack, great advice. We always say that the hardest bit is to get going. Once you get going, and you say, as you say, very humbly, you've got a handful of clients. But like everything in life, yes, your point, the more you do it, the better you get. But equally, the more people you engage with and the more services you deliver, the higher the likelihood of referrals. And that's when things really start to get exciting in our experience, that people start coming back to you as a consequence of speaking to an existing client. So at the start, it's all on you. You've got to develop the leads, you've got to find the business. There's nothing more fulfilling, I don't think, when somebody comes and says, I am a friend of, or I have worked with, and they recommended you, and then things start coming back to you. So I think it's having the patience to hold the ground, as you say, long enough to deliver to a level that people are then willing to give you a referral. So I think there's the other side of that coin. You get better at it and you deliver results that people then come back to your door with.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think having a spouse that supports you in this, regardless of what's going to happen tomorrow or 2 months from now, I think that's what got me through a lot of the dark days, like because you're not in this alone and you're not supposed to be in it alone. Even though it's your own business, you don't have to build it alone. It's just like raising kids,
Yeah.
you get a team, you get a village involved. And in saying that, I joined a retirement transition program after I stopped, and that whole process has been also like a big catalyst and movement for my own business because I got to, network with athletes, with coaches, with people who understand what I'm going through
Hmm.
and who could, who help me utilize the skill sets that I got from rugby and apply it to business. And through that program, I actually got my first, referring client that I've never heard of. And, it's not possible if I wasn't part of, something else,
Yes.
a different network and a different support system. So yeah, get
No,
people
that's
around you.
go on, Jack. Sorry.
No, no, I just want to say if you have people around you that support you and believe in you, it makes it easier. You don't have to do it alone.
No, and that again is great advice. And you mentioned there sort of dark days, and then you've framed it perfectly. But I think that's another nice thing just to dive in a bit more, Jack. That there are dark days. I think pretty much everyone we've spoken to, and I'm not putting words in your mouth. You tell me how it was for you. That they struggle, and that's okay because very few have everything lined up in such a way that you step out of sport, everything's seamless, one continuous upward trajectory without any bumps in the road. So, were the moments where you felt, "Oof, where am I? What am I doing?" That sort of loss of identity, and I think you've answered the second part of what we often say: how important is community and connection and talking to other people that have walked the path as well to help you through that darker time. So presumably you just touched on it very briefly. There were moments that were challenging as you stepped out of that identity of being Jack, the professional rugby player.
Yeah, there were a lot of moments, man. This whole transition away from sport is a very traumatic experience, actually. Like, I struggled deeply, and I think some days I still do. Much better at it when as time goes on. But I mean, those initial sort of months, it's tough to, put on the television and watch your old mates play. Like, I didn't even want to watch rugby for for a year, maybe even more.
Hmm.
And I really try to, separate myself from that identity because, that is no longer me, and I'm trying to find a new me. But I mean, like looking back, that was a big mistake because it's always, going to be part of you. You just have to, use it in a different way. And but yeah, it was saying that it was a big struggle, and there were, weeks and months that went by where my poor wife had to consolidate me and just,
Yeah.
keep me floating. And I think, conversations come up, and I would say like, what am I actually gonna do? Like, what am I good at? Like, this was like everything to me. Like, yes, I know a little bit about this and a little bit about that, but I just feel like average in everything. What am I gonna be like known for and good at now that I'm not playing? Like all of those, ping pong conversations
Hmm.
happen, every few weeks, every few months. And yeah, I think it's normal. I think it's part of it. So yeah, again, having someone that can support you through this, I think is key. It was key for me.
Yeah, and well said. And I think you've sounds like you've got a fabulous partner in your wife. So for people listening, sometimes that's available. Sometimes that you've got a great husband or a great wife that's there, very much in your corner, that has the patience to let you go and do your own thing, and also has the empathy to console you and understand that there's a grieving process you've got to go through as you transition out of sport into business. For some people, they don't have that for a variety of reasons. It might be just purely and simply because they're single. They're not in that sort of relationship, and that's where I think it's important to do the other part of what you spoke about, Jack, speaking to people who have walked that path. And that's a big part of who we are and what we do is whether it's Carl and I in a coaching or mentoring capacity, or connecting athletes with our ambassadorial network, because most of the challenges, if not all of them, have been felt and experienced by other people. And when you first step out, you feel you're on your own. And your point is exactly the phrase we hear repeated: what am I going to be good at now? Now that I'm not an Olympian, now that I'm not a boxer, now that I'm not a cricketer or a rugby player. And there's a whole raft of things. But you need that perspective. Going back to that earlier word, you need clarity. So you need people to help guide you. So the key message that Carl and I say repeatedly is: don't suffer in silence. Don't sit there in that dark place thinking, well, I'm the only person that's ever experienced this, and I'm never going to have success beyond my sporting chapter. Because guess very kindly and very candidly, as you've done, frequently expressed to us, no, there was plenty of dark places, but support around me helped get me through. So I think it's just reiterating to anybody listening: if you've got that partner, wonderful. But if you don't, you're not alone. There's plenty of people out there who can help. And just going back to one of the points you made earlier, Jack, about skill set. You mentioned how being in that community, talking to people, they helped identify skills and things that were already in your proverbial toolkit from being that professional rugby player that will serve you moving forward. So if you had to pull one or two of those skills out, Jack, what would you say has really helped you with the development and growth of Leap Digital and the business that you're now in, that you had in you as a skill from your sporting chapter?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to reference something that Flip van der Merwe also said,
Yep.
and he's been on the pod as well.
Yes.
And I don't know if he said it on this pod or in his content somewhere or just in one of our calls, is that, the rugby players have this unique, soft skills that they already have and they bring into a business space. If you think like you've been in a high performance environment in a team for, more than 10 years, and you're stepping into a corporate or an office role, these most of these people have been isolated for long. Like they study, they get a job, and they, follow the job description. They sort of think they have it figured out, but they experience the same thing you do. Like the longer I was in that sort of my first job, I was thinking, most of the days, like how do I sort this out? Like, what is this process? What do we do now? Who do we call? And the longer I was in that, because I thought everyone knew what to do. Like every day, like if there's a crisis, they know what to do
Hmm.
instantly. They know who to speak to. But the longer I was there, the more I realized like we're all just trying to figure it out. Whether you're a professional player who's retired or you've been working the same job for 10 years. Different challenges present themselves different on different days, and you adapt. And I think pulling that adaptability and that ability to adapt from
Hmm.
rugby is what's helped me, in my relationships, in business, and how I deal with people, is to realize like, okay, well, things aren't always going to go your way. Nothing is set in stone.
Hmm.
To find what works now, what worked yesterday might not work today. It's a continuous journey, and you just need to find what works and find new ideas and not rely on this has worked for me and it will in future.
Yeah, yeah, no, great, well said. I love that, and it's so true, so true in life, in business, in sport. You can have the best game plan in the world, but sport articulates it perfectly. You're reliant on the opposition being compliant and doing everything you want to execute your game plan, which they never will be, and it's the same in business. So one of the things I just wanted to get your steer on is the utilization of LinkedIn, Jack. Both Carl and I admire what you're doing on LinkedIn. You're very proactive, you're very authentic. There's lots of content coming out from you that's very engaging. A lot of athletes talk to us and they have a desire and aspiration to start to develop their brand, but they don't really know where to start. And we will always advocate start doing things on LinkedIn and we support them to do that. So it'd be great to get your perspective on LinkedIn, how you're using it, when you started using it, and just any sort of, I suppose, encouragement for people just to get out there and start to use it from a professional brand development point of view.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, LinkedIn has been a really, cool journey for me and a massive part of how I do business and how I get business. And I think if I had to go back, I would have started way earlier just to, get produce content and not consume.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think in effect, I only started taking it serious in January of this year because, I read up a lot of resources and I saw a lot of big creators, claiming how good this platform is for my kind of business and the industry that I'm in. Just said, just start posting, share your ideas, share how you help people, make it very clear. Don't try to be too fancy about it. And, it's going to work eventually. So I ended up, researching a lot of big creators and see how they do things, figuring out like my own little strategy around like how do I attract people to want to do business with me because in effect I'm not a household name, like some of the rugby players. I was sort of I was one of the hard workers, let's say. That wasn't the try
Yeah,
scorer.
yeah.
So yeah, as I said, I spent a lot of time consuming, and I started with I think there's a strategy that a lot of creators use, and it's called, top funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel strategy, where basically top funnel is, you produce content about like who you are, what you've been through, your take, just to let people sort of see Jacques and what's his life been, what's his unique views. Middle funnel is where you share a little bit about what you do and how you help people. And bottom funnel is where you physically, you make the ask and you say, listen, this is what I do. I want to work with this type of person. Here's a call to action, if you want to work with me. And at the beginning, I implemented that, as a 3 post a week sort of cadence to see if I can get some traction, and started doing well. And I must say, like, the biggest skill that I can recommend anyone learn is how to write on LinkedIn. Because, I think 90% of people, when they want to post something, they go into ChatGPT and they say, listen, write me a LinkedIn post about retiring from rugby, if that if that makes
Hmm.
sense. Just going through the platform, you see 90% of people, post those kind of things and get very little traction. It doesn't really, help connect you to people. So the best thing that's worked for me is to make it real and less AI. I
Hmm.
use AI to refine sort of the processes around it. But, just writing as you would speak has been the biggest game changer for me, if I can say it like that,
Yeah.
because it helped people resonate with what I had to say. It's authentic, and it's opened up a lot of opportunities, man. Like honestly, and up to a stage where I felt like, okay, well, this is really, I love doing this. I'm now at a point where I post something every day, Monday to Friday, just because I see the value in it and I see the value of being top of mind constantly.
Yeah.
And yeah, if I could give advice to, current players, because I have friends who still play and they think, well, what am I gonna post? Like I don't work, I don't want to post about rugby all the time. And I think there's a what players can use who's still playing is they can just start sharing, the industry and ideas that they're passionate about. They can reference, other people, authority figures in that space and say, listen, Carl Birch from AT, what
ATA.
class?
Yeah.
ATA. Sorry, I just got the
No, you're
that
fine. That's good. It's good. It's good promotion for us. So I'm pleased you slipped it in there.
100%. Yeah, so people can reference, authority figures like that and say, listen, just saw this post from Carl Birch from ATA. Um, I agree with this or I disagree with this, so you don't have to produce your own ideas. You can piggyback a lot of off of other people's ideas and content,
Yeah.
and even just start commenting on things. Just say, listen, hey, this is cool, really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
And it opens up, even that in itself opens up a lot of opportunities and
No,
new
that's
content.
that's really simple but powerful advice, Jack. I just wanted to seize on that because that is a question we get time and again. I don't want to post about cricket or rugby or hockey or netball. It's not about posting about what you do now. We very much encourage people to think about what you're interested in the future. And exactly what you said, Jack, one of the best ways to do that is to start liking and commenting on content in that space because that fires up the algorithms. You'll get shown more of it, you get more opportunities to comment on it, and it just helps to start to open that shop window into something else. It's not about posting your highlights reels or your big tackles or your big scoring opportunities. It's about building that professional network and making people aware of what you're interested in. So I think that's great advice. And you're starting to talk there, which takes us nicely into another question we always ask Jack about do's and don'ts. You're encouraging existing athletes on how they would use LinkedIn then. But one of the things, and it may be LinkedIn, maybe something else that we always like to ask guests is when you look back on your transition, and we're all, what's that phrase? We're all a genius with the benefit of hindsight. But part of the benefit of this podcast is we allow listeners to tap into the hindsight, the wisdom that people have as a consequence of walking that path. So if you had to pull out one piece of advice that's a do this to make transition out of sport into your next chapter easier, what might that be? And also a don't, if there is one that comes to mind. Don't do this because it will make your transition a little bit easier. What comes to mind on that question for you, Jack?
Okay, great question. I love that. So for the do part of that, I think it's, in person and on LinkedIn. I think rugby players underestimate sort of the opportunity we have in the rooms we were in when we play, the kind of people that are in our immediate sort of vicinity.
Mm-hmm.
And those kind of people, big corporate sponsors, head of, departments are there at our post game functions, ready to engage and they love watching us. So, as a big do, I would say if I could go back, I would just start to engage with those kind of people a bit more. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
need to take up your whole evening or your whole sort of event, but just hi, how are you? What do you do? Like, I'm this and this, and then you can just say, "Oh, that's interesting, man. You mind if I grab your contact details?
Yeah,
That's something I'm looking into in a few years. Maybe we can just have a coffee."
perfect.
So I think is really powerful, and I think like um, big business owners, big shot CEOs will sacrifice, a portion of their diary for free just to, sit and speak to us and feel like they can give some insight and value to a professional sports person,
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I would definitely encourage, current athletes to do and utilize when they can.
Great
Um, another
advice.
thing is Another thing is online as well on LinkedIn. When you're still playing and you see something, someone in your space or in the industry you like, reach out. It doesn't cost you anything to send someone a DM and say, listen, really like your company, love what you guys are doing. Next week I'm around. if you're willing, like I'd love to have a little sit down with you and discuss, ideas about what I can do post rugby. Like I admire what you've done. And, sometimes you get a yes, sometimes you get a no. And I think current players or athletes will get more yeses than they do no's because they're in that fortunate position to leverage that and say, well, I don't really need this, but it's gonna benefit me. So that
Yep.
just makes the conversation a bit, more open and fun, if that makes sense.
Yep. Perfect sense.
So yeah.
And what about on the
Um,
don't side of things?
The downside of things, I think, don't waste away all your off time with, lounging on the couch and, doing nothing. I think there's a time for, resting and relaxing. And I'm not saying you should take every off day and go and read 10 books. But I think if you can dedicate, one off day a month when you're at minimum to spend either doing, free courses online or just reading through resources on LinkedIn or whatever, that's something that's going to compound in years to come. And before you know it, something pops into your head, some kind of idea as to, this might be a potential, income stream for me because I've read about this. I really like this. Let me just start something with someone or by myself to see if I can, get something out of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my big don't is just don't just focus on your identity as a rugby player. Focus on, I'm a rugby player, but I can also do this. I'm a rugby player now, but I'm also good at this. I'm
Yeah.
a rugby player now or an athlete now, but I have huge potential in this. So yeah, that would be my big don't.
Yeah, no, fabulous answers, and Carl and I sort of smiling as we're listening because it just ties in with everything that we're saying to
Yeah.
people. Take the opportunities. It's a theme that comes through time and again. You've got a currency, you've got a gravitas when you're a professional athlete to be able to open doors and start conversations more effectively than perhaps any other sector. And particularly when they're in your own stadium, your own facility, they're there because they have an interest and a synergy with your sporting discipline. So that enhances the ability to get people's contact details, as you say, Jacques, even further. And again, we never say compromise your recovery, but you have far more time than you realize. And you do realize when you step out of sport just how much time you had. And being able to maximize that for your own growth and development. Nobody's going to be there telling you what you should and shouldn't do. You've got to be your own taskmaster to say, how can I grow and develop? So yeah, love that advice. And on the subject of advice, Jack, we've got a couple of sort of quick fire questions we always throw in towards the end of our conversations. So best piece of advice you've ever received? It could be sporting, business, anything in between. But if you were to share something, say that's probably one of the best pieces of advice I've ever been given, what comes to mind on that question for you?
Wow, man, that's a massive question. I've gotten so many, advice pieces. It's tough to articulate, what's the best piece of advice. Um, I think if I had to pull everything back, it's not really like a piece of advice. It's a verse from the Bible, and
Hmm.
it's in Romans 8 chapter, no, it's Romans 8:28, and it basically says, all things work together for good. So whatever happens, I think there's an opportunity for you to either, let life happen to you or you let life happen, if that makes sense. So
Hmm.
if something happens like, I didn't get selected for the team, all things work together for good. Am I going to use this to say, listen, the coach doesn't like me, like I'm not going to even try, or am I going to use that to say, listen, okay, there's a reason he didn't pick me, so let's make this work for good and work on whatever I need to work on.
Yeah.
Same with business, like I lost this deal probably for the best because stars didn't align. So how am I going to use this rejection as something good? Learn from it, apply it into the next one. So I think that's probably the one thing, piece of advice that I got
Yeah.
that yeah, it's really changed a lot for me, and it's something that I reference daily. It's even been on my screensaver for very long.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Love it. Love it. And that's the power of finding these sources of inspiration. when you talk about using those rest days, both Carl and I love to read, love to research, love to listen to other podcasts. There's so much wisdom and knowledge in the world. Then you find something like that verse that resonates with you, whether it comes from the Bible, an autobiography, a course that you've done, and then you use it to your advantage, as you say. Pop it on a screensaver. So simple, but so easy to neglect these simple things to help give you those guiding lights to move forward. And just on the subject of researching and reading, I don't know if you're a particularly avid reader, Jack, but we always like to say to people, is there a particular book that you've read, or a podcast, or some sort of resource that's had a significant impact on your journey, something that you would recommend to people and say, well worth a listen or well worth a read?
I think I'm not an avid reader, but I have read some books that I felt, okay, this is what I need right now. And I think Think and Grow Rich is a really cool book for me, because it's not only teaches you, like, obviously how to make money, but it's the whole principle of, writing down a clear pathway vision for yourself that you can see daily, that you can, read to yourself aloud to make it more real. And I think that just makes you subconsciously unstoppable, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because just looking back, when I really like follow those principles, and it wasn't just about, making money, because we all want to make money. It was about believing in what I felt I needed to do, which was, start this business, and, having clear targets for myself and accountability, references every few months. Because, when the days got tough, you have that in front of you, every morning you can reference that and say, okay, well, my goal was to hit this number by that time. I'm not there yet, so it doesn't need to be a big issue that I lost this deal or got rejected on that call or whatever. So I think that's definitely a very cool resource or book that I would suggest.
Yes. Yeah.
The
Look.
other the other big or massive investment that I made in myself was to get the pro version of OpenAI. I think that's been a real game changer in terms of, my working flow and research, because I'm going to reference, writing again, because that's something that I needed to improve on. And I wanted to accelerate the process. So what I did was I got a lot of, writing online ebooks, and instead of, reading it word for word, I would, upload them into a custom folder or like a project, and say, listen, this is my goal. I want to write LinkedIn posts. What can you tell me that will make me a better writer today? Like, it just sums up the whole thing for you. And I think eventually you get to a place where, okay, now I have time to sit down and read these resources. But I think it
Mhm.
just accelerates the whole process when you're working after that, to say, listen, please find this for me. It references it. The books are uploaded. So that's another cool, resource that I would recommend
Yeah. No,
someone
look,
use.
great advice, chat. And I think that Think and Grow Rich comes up frequently, and it ties very nicely into where we started this conversation. It's another step that you've articulated being practically implemented about clarity. We start to understand what's important to us, where we want to go, what we want to do. You did that. That took you to Leap Digital. I think the next step of that clarity is, well, what is success for us? It's not about external matrix. It's not about what other people in society think success is. It's about creating goals along the pathway that brings you success and fulfillment. And as you've talked about there, being able to say it out loud, to be able to clearly articulate, where am I trying to get to? What is success for me? And that gives you that North Star. Because when the bumps come, which they always do, and the challenges or the loss of client or something doesn't quite work out, you have something to hold on to. You have a clarity of direction. You understand, well, this is where I am on the journey, so let's take the next step. So you've shared so many fabulous practical insights of how you're living this transition, and I think it's been wonderful to listen to. Carl, is there anything from your perspective that you want to circle back to, touch on, that we've talked about today?
Yeah, I think just one more question to dive into, Jackson. Just firstly, thank you for your time today. This has been fantastic. James and I talk about this on a daily basis, but we wholeheartedly agree with everything that you've said in terms of your do's and your don'ts and what you should be doing to prepare for life after your professional chapter. But I just want to dig a little bit more into your second chapter, life beyond your professional rugby. And one of the things James and I say, and people that listen to this will hear this every single time, but we always say, who says your sporting chapter has to be your best? because yes, it's wonderful. Most people would give their right arm to be a professional athlete and just walk out into those stadiums and get to see the crowd and hear the noise. But you're going to be out of that world for much longer than you're actually in it. So if you're looking to leave that world with the mindset of, well, now what? What am I going to be chasing now? We always like to say, well, you've got so much time now. You can be whoever you want to be. You can achieve whatever you want to achieve. You just need to figure it out and think about it and get some clarity. But I just want to dig a little bit into where you are now. If you could sort of summarize your transition from day one to where you are now, because on the face of it, you look at LinkedIn and you're really, really active on there. You've been quite coy about this, but you're actually the third biggest creator in South Africa for growth and lead generation. I saw that. So you're obviously doing the right things and people are interacting and listening to what you've got to say. But if you could summarize your transition, what would be some of the things that came to mind just to help those athletes that are coming behind you?
Okay, yeah. So I think hopping onto your point about, you're in rugby much shorter than you are, life after. And I think it's exactly what you say. Like I've experienced that the longer I've been away from the game, the more I realize, there's a life out there, 70 plus years where rugby was only 10 years of it. And as great as it was, I love what you said, Carl. Like it doesn't need to be like the best days of your life. Like there can be something better. And I think where I am now is I've accepted obviously that was part of me and it's always going to be part of me, a reference point. But looking forward, that's much more exciting to me now, knowing like you can actually, be whatever you want to be, find what you love, do that, build your family, raise your kids, see them make the same same mistakes, or hopefully not. But yeah, I think looking back, that's far more, exciting now, knowing that's something that I can focus on and not like, what am I going to play? Who am I going to play against next week? That was really fun. And like I said, it's always going to be a massive reference point. But just to where I am now and what's next, like the whole transition period is sort of, it was a steady build up to where I am now as to where I can now be in a space where okay, I'm present for my family. Like you said, I'm steadily building like, my own business. I'm not knocking out headlights yet, but I'm choosing to, work at my own pace and prioritize what I want to prioritize because I don't want to be in that corporate, workhorse space where, you build this massive portfolio of clients, but you're never at home and you miss good and cool life events with your family. So I think for me, what's next is, finding that sweet spot between, yes, you want to provide for your family, but you also want to be present for them and to find sort of those ideas, those opportunities to make both of them work because it is possible, man. Like these days with the technology and the network like we have available, like you can literally be whatever you want to be and there's always money to be made. You just need to find those opportunities or create new ones for yourself.
Yeah. I think that there's a line in there that's an absolute knockout line. Prioritize what you want to prioritize. And you've gone into that space. I think to your credit, Jack, as we've listened to you today, it's important to reiterate it's only a couple of years since you finished playing and you've had the candor to say, yep, there were some dark points. You've spoken to other people. You've engaged with that wider community of transitioning ex-professional athletes, and that's helped you. You had the courage to start your own business. And yes, you're very humble with it, but 2 years down the track, you're finding that fulfillment, you're finding that growth. And I think that's a really powerful message to all of those athletes out there that are thinking, I'd quite like to start my own thing, but it's not possible. It is possible when you hear other people talking about it. And just on that notion of presence, which you've mentioned a few times, I talked to a very successful entrepreneur recently, and that was how he defined success. He said, being an entrepreneur allows you to be present. It allows you to structure your time to ensure that you're doing all the things you want to do. And his example was taking care of your health, being present for your children, present for your partner, present for your clients. You blend that flow together. Now there's risk to it. There's challenges, as you've alluded to start your own thing. But one of the biggest upsides is that ability to choose and, to your phrase, prioritize what you want to prioritize. So anybody listening that's thinking, what's the real upside? That's the upside for me. Yes, the financial success we hope comes with it is always nice, but that ability to be really present. So once again, Jack, as we've thrown the questions that you've given us, fabulous answers, great insights. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you and listening with you today. For those people, which I'm sure there'll be many that might want to reach out and connect with you, is LinkedIn the best platform to find you on?
Yeah, I think they can look for me on LinkedIn. That's sort of my main channel that I'm active on, for my, sharing personal stories and business related stories. I keep a good mix between, where I come from and how I help people, and most of the things I share is supposed to be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it'd be good for anyone who wants to connect with me, even if it's for, post sport chats. Like, that's something that I also advocate for. And after completing, the transition and retirement program in South Africa, like, it's good to see, people engaging in those conversations and, reaching out to me regarding those things as well, and not just, what I'm doing as a business, but, the
Mm-hmm.
program that I went through and how I can introduce that to other athletes to help them cope. Because I think I was one of those guys that I was actually, like, on paper, I got it figured out. Like, I had a degree, I had a job, but even I needed that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that a little program that just guides you along the way, and it opens up a lot of doors after that. So yeah.
Fabulous. Well, Jack, thank you once again. I wish you all the success with Leap Digital and life in this next chapter. Thank you on behalf of Carl and I for your time and your wisdom. I know it's going to be very helpful to a lot of people. So thanks very much.
Thanks, James, and thanks, Carl, for the opportunity, man. It was really cool chatting to you guys, and I look forward to following your platforms as well.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks for joining us this week on our ATA podcast. If you found this conversation insightful and it resonates with your journey, please subscribe, follow the show, and stay connected with us for more insights, resources, and information on how we at ATA are supporting your preparation for life beyond the game.